What is good, agency owners? We have a seven-figure founder who in just 6 months went from 1 to 2 million. Patrick O'Driscoll, the founder and CEO of the Visionary Group, in a very short period of time, went from 1 million to more than 2 million, went to $2.2 million run rate in just 6 months. And in this conversation, we're breaking down how he did it. And we had the pleasure of being there along the journey. So before we get going, Patrick, thank you so much for jumping on the conversation. Before we get too deep into it, who's Pat? Give us the elevator intro of you and your agency.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Patrick, co-founder of TVG. Myself and my two co-founders started this about 3 years ago now. We focus 100% on scaling e-commerce brands. We originally started in the health and fitness space. Now we've expanded out to more broadly e-commerce. Based in Dallas, Texas, most of our team is down here and just looking to keep the momentum up.
Unbelievable. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically give the story. How did we go from $1 million a year up to 2.2 million a year, or like the 170, 175K a month range in such a short period of time? Because that's crazy.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to give the listeners kind of a quick overview from my notes of where you were when I met you and when we met you. And then you tell us what we missed, and then I'll start to ask some questions. So when we met, you're doing roughly 80K a month. At that point, you're just working in the fitness space. You wanted at that point to be the go-to marketers in the fitness space. You wanted to have your business dialed in and build a strong team of processes, but you had been going through growing pains. At that point, two of your staff need to work on their skills, and you weren't sure if you need to hire. Every client felt like a burden and stress on operations, and you just weren't sure about your bandwidth. Like, you were struggling to scale. You guys had constrained. You guys had peaked at 1 million. So that's even saying that's a crazy recap of like hearing that to going back here in just 6 months. What did I miss about that recap? And then when we started with you, like, what were some of the things we did in the first 1-2 months that started to make impact?
Yeah, for sure. So since it's myself and my two co-founders, and we had a small team at the time, we were just like tons and tons of overlap and doing the same things. And so our goal, we grew to $80,000 a month or whatever it was, pretty much 100% organically. And we weren't even like onboarding a crazy amount of clients, but it just like our retention was already strong. And I knew that as we grew and as we took on more clients, we simply just didn't have the process or the bandwidth to really support scale. And so came to you guys knowing you guys are just the experts in operations, and really just try to map out. The first thing that was really productive for us was looking at us, the co-founders, and focusing on how we can optimize our time better. There was definitely areas we were overlapping, being inefficient with our time. I was on the fulfillment side, and while I should be focused more on sales, new business, Zach, my COO, was drowning in client work, same with Cannon. So for the first exercise, which just got us all on the same page, was pointing the direction of us as co-founders. And then from there, how do we document all the systems and then hire people to continuously grow the team so that we can actually scale? Once we got that all dialed in, which I'm happy to expand more on, that allowed us to now turn on the engines, the marketing engines, to really onboard and scale the agency more effectively.
In just 2 steps, you doubled your business, right? So what was that alignment process looking like? Because one of the things, if you're listening to this, right, one of the things that I find is it's called Solomon's paradox. You're so close to the problem, it's hard to objectively see it. So I can imagine the three of you are just all like, we're in the weeds and like, how the fuck do we fix this? And it sounds like within a pretty quick timeline, you guys have worked with Mike. We objectively defined, here's what the three of you are doing, here's the expectations. What specifically was called out in that alignment process?
Yeah, I think there were just, like I said, overlapping of roles. And I think it was super beneficial to have like a third party like you guys just like look at us, figure out where our skill sets are, and like point our focus on what we should be focusing on. Because like it's tough when you're co-founders, we're pride ourselves, like we don't have ego. We're just trying to figure out like where we should be and why we should be in those seats. And looking back, like we had no idea kind of where our zone of genius was. And then you guys kind of showed, based upon what we like to do, what we're good at, how we can divide and conquer and scale that way. And then, before us as co-founders were almost talking daily on meetings, same meetings all the time. Now we always joke about how like we're each on our own island and we meet like twice a week and we're just like catching up on all the crazy stuff that we're each individually focusing on. So it basically panned out to be myself more CEO, Zach COO, and then Cannon CMO. And that division really helped us kind of divide and conquer, like I said, and work more effectively.
And you guys now stop having redundancy, like because you're working, you're getting economies of skill of your time, right? You're not having 3 founders working on the same thing. You're having 3 founders work on segments of the business that allows you to compound your time far more effectively. So we define roles, we define seats, we define expectations. Did you guys even define to like, here's what you're responsible for, here's what you're doing every week as well?
Yeah. So with that, each of us had like our daily actions and even daily KPIs that we're responsible for. So I was leading new business development, Zach being client retention, client success, churn rate, Cannon on some marketing efforts and some dedicated client stuff. So that allowed us to just like know what we're working on, meet once a week, know we're all on the right track, and streamline our leadership process for sure.
And you guys went for meeting daily. So when you moved to once a week, what were the things you guys said? Here's what this meeting is now for, to make it more efficient.
Yeah, so now we have 2 standing meetings that are like our leadership meetings, and usually the first meeting of the week is more reactive and more just like putting out fires or discussing things or hiring, whatever is like really important for that week. And then usually the second call is more long-term strategies, whether it's like a financial planning call, like a marketing dedicated call. It's more focused on like building and high leverage stuff. So that just optimizes our time, make sure we're all working on the right things, and then still collaborative and getting feedback and support where we need it.
Yeah, one of the things I always talk about is I've seen this so many times where when founders come in with 2 or 3, the rate of growth goes up like crazy because, it's not just one founder now has to go, but there's 3 founders. You go take this segment. I'm going to go take this segment. So you get 3x the productivity.
Yeah.
Compared to you guys might, if there was another business we started at the same time that had 1 founder, the productivity gap is there's such a disparity because you guys have 3x the time to actually, not only the time, but to actually execute at a high level. Because if you're co-founders, I'm assuming everyone's exceptional like you guys are.
Yeah.
So we do that and then we build the workflow, right? So we define first step, second step, all the way to keeping them for a very long time. What were some of the insights that you did by doing that experience and like what came out of that?
Yeah. So really that was spearheaded by Zach as his new role or new focus as COO. So he really went through, built out all the process workflows, prioritized our main core services that we did. We had 2 A players that worked for us at the time, but they were just kind of run around, just reacting to stuff and no real system for us to organize everything. So yeah, Zach built out all the process workflows, assigned owners to everything, decentralized a lot of the ownership. So it's not just all on our shoulders as leaders, but also like the team has core things that they're responsible for. And then what happened is that any active clients, like they were kind of transitioned to this process workflow, and then onboarding clients was a lot easier because it's just a step 1, step 2, step 3. So the onboarding process, client fulfillment, client delivery, streamlined. So that allowed us to really just know and create a well-oiled machine for when we onboard clients. Because in the past, whenever we onboard a client, it was like everyone's like freaking out, like what do we do? Who's does what? What's the timeline? Like all that stuff. So a lot of that got streamlined through the process workflow process.
What's your tech stack? What project management software do you guys use to templatize everything?
Yeah, we're all on Notion. So we're using Notion, but improved Notion, working alongside you guys, and now that's really built out.
Yeah, I thought so, but I was like, I can't remember for sure. Okay, so you worked with our team a little bit on Notion, Notion's really grown on me over the last year, and it's implementing heavily with AI. So we define everything. We build, I'm assuming there's SOPs and processes as well, like trainings on how to do stuff.
Yeah.
We're at 80K. What happened next, right? Because obviously we don't just go from 80 to 175. So like you define everything for a team, you build the workflow, we put in Notion, leaders are now focused. Like what happened next that actually started to lead to growth?
Yeah, I think for like the first 2 or 3 months there, we just focused on like we scaled 100% organically up to this point. So I think we had our best month of like just shy of 100 in July. Then we're sitting at 70, 80. That's when we started working with you guys to just start to build a reliable system to scale up. so that when we onboard clients, we weren't freaking out, because our retention is really strong. It's one thing we pride ourselves on. So we add a client, always added more work. And so we needed to figure out how we can double our business and not crash and burn. So with the first few months working with you guys, just really focusing on operations, we learned how to hire. That was huge. Mike worked with us on how to like plan for hiring and how to make sure you can financially be ready for hiring and all that, so that we could start to project out like, okay, this is what business 2.0 is going to look like in 3-6 months. And after those 3 months of really just building, 100% focus on building the system and still just adding clients through the organic efforts, we're then like, okay, it's time to turn on this engine and start paid marketing. And so that's really what took us from like January to now, is just complete scale. So just spending a ton on ads, acquiring new clients, and that just allowed us to scale without breaking everything. Because if you told us to start running paid ads when we first started working with you, it would have been an absolute nightmare. Now we have the systems to take on more clients consistently.
Great. So you said one of my favorite things that I call it the org chart model. Like, what's the org chart today? What's it going to be when we take on 5, 10, 20 more clients? And what's the cost implications of what's it going to look like on your P&L, so you're not like surprised?
Yeah.
And what do you need to start to plan around that? So just doing that. And then in the hiring process, were there any lessons for you that like, this seems obvious, but like maybe I didn't know it? Or were there any specific hiring lessons that you learned just formally building out a hiring process?
Yeah, I think one thing that Mike really stressed with us is that one thing that's like important about our team specifically is just our culture. And so in the past, we used to hire on just like purely skill set alone, or just like, oh, this guy's an expert, let's hire him. And then he just wouldn't be a good fit for a team or whatever, just the culture that we have. So he really prioritized culture for us. That was good for us to know. And then next, really make sure like when it comes to compensation and like W-2 or 1099, or we have a good prospect and Mike would be like, hey, you might want to consider this. Like, they say they can only work part-time for you and they have these other focuses. This actually might not be a good fit. Hire this person instead. So just with us kind of being a little bit naive and failing a bunch of times before working with you guys hiring, just set us up to actually like look out for certain things and to prioritize like the right things for hiring. So I think when we work with you guys, first priority was like a client success manager. We work through that, get that to take work off Zach's plate, and then kind of one after another hire those things that are most low leverage or most needed to be added to the business to improve capacity and service delivery.
Amazing notes, right? We're hiring, we're forecasting, we're hiring built with like kind of some cultural filters. What's a good fit versus not? We're understanding what roles to hire, W-2 or 1099. We're learning how to filter out an interview based on like where talent's priorities are. You start to grow organically, return on paid ads. And now in the onboarding process, we're like hiring low leverage roles. So like lower leverage, not necessarily low leverage exclusively, but
yeah,
client success was a hire. What were some of the other roles that you guys hired for once you went through that process?
We hired a creative strategist to improve our creative side. We hired a ton of like freelancers, like video editors, like creative people. I think we have a team of like 10 to 15 freelancers there. And then what else did we hire for? A copywriter and stuff like that. So really it was like everyone had so much on their shoulders. It's basically us three, the founders, 2 really key employees, and just like everyone had too much on their plate. So we looked at like the advertising sector. Well, that can be broken off onto you have a paid media manager, you have your creative strategist, you have video editors, and just sort of breaking out the work a little bit better so it's not on one person's shoulders.
Yeah, so we started to segregate the things into things that could be like, you're just going to master this one role and we're going to ramp you up on this one thing a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
You said something interesting. You guys got 10 to 15. How many people have you hired in the last 6 months in total between freelancers and like full-time contractors?
I mean, hire probably 20 plus people, I'd say.
That kind of takes
combination of.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. Like, congratulations, right? That's like not a joke at all. So we started to hire everyone. Were there any things from now that you're onboarding and training new talent and a lot of new talent, what were the things that were already implemented and waiting for them that made hiring and training smoother so they could actually get enroll faster?
Yeah. So like one thing Mike really helped us with is that like in the past we hire someone and throw them on like a client account and be like, all right, act now. So that was just not a good process. So now it's like, okay, we hire someone. There's like usually a couple weeks of intensive training, shadowing, learning. Zach is working one-on-one with them, making sure they have everything good to go. Then slowly start to creep into client work. Throughout that whole process, they have, they're walking through a deck on what our company's all about, what our values are, educate them about that. Make sure that like the contract process and all that streamlined, make sure they're onto payroll. And then, once they're ready, move on to client work. So it's more of a gradual ramp up process where we hold their hand and then set them up for success and set clear expectations on here's what your KPIs or here's what numbers you're responsible for, and then monitoring those people. So before it was just like hire someone, okay, go work with no direction. Now it's like a whole process. And that's something that we've had to get better at, especially as we grow, is like, okay, if we're going to be at capacity, let's say in May 15th, we need to hire someone now because we need to ramp them up for a month and give them the resources so that they are 100% good to go May 15th. We would hire someone May 10th and hoping that they're 100% good to go May 15th, which was detrimental. So definitely just that whole onboarding process on the employee side has been beneficial.
What's the furthest out in advance you hired someone before the need was there? Rather than 5 days, like how far out are you looking now?
Yeah, for like client success, we're now looking at like 30 to 60 days, especially if they're not, like it depends, like if they're not really well versed in e-commerce or marketing space or like really the intricacies of that. So really with the client success manager, it's like up to 2 months is really what we're trying to do. So like right now we're hiring, I was meeting today, like there's 5 new key roles we need to hire in the next month. And we're kind of mapping out like the priorities of how we're going to do that, because we're kind of at another point where we doubled and now we're kind of feeling a little bit of that pain again, but it's like we at least have the processes down. We just need to kind of fill seats and expand the team. So
yeah, I mean, it's at every level there's new pain points. So that's actually one of the pain points now at the $2 million run rate is management, right? Like how we have 20 more people now than we did before. How do we manage? So like what were some of the lessons and systems you guys implemented from a management perspective? Because we built some really good hiring and onboarding and training process. What changed from a management perspective and what's been implemented and what are you guys still doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like the number one thing that we're still working through, but like with what we've built, it's definitely improved. So like before, it was all on kind of us as leadership to do everything. Everyone kind of messaged us when they need something. Is all kind of super centralized leadership. Now we're starting to empower and work on empowering like our core team members that, hey, you manage this person, you're responsible for this. If they fail, if someone under you is failing, that's like a reflection on you. You can't just come to us and say like, oh, this person screwed up, and really try to develop our team that, started with us, a year ago into leaders. And that's really the priority now is like those 2 A players that we had for a while, we're trying to create them as like heads of department and have people under them and teams under them. And so, yeah, that's definitely something we're still working on, but now we have all the systems and processes to like train new people up on that. And now it's more of a training on managing, not just training on processes that we're currently working on.
Yeah. And then for everyone listening, right, like the 3 things I always advocate for, management's responsible for 3 things, like executing the plan. So you guys as the executive team are still creating the plan, but your pod leaders, I call them, you're calling it something different, but it's all the same things. Here's the plan you got to execute. Here's what we need per client. Retain your talent. So we have all these people. We don't want to lose them. So how do we retain them? What do they need? When they need to get paid? What do they need from like an interpersonal perspective, training, and then develop them, make them better. So when we fall short, it's a lot of auditing is what I say. Audit, and then coach. And even coaching, how do you coach better? One fun thing we do on an AI side is we have an AI auditor that is there to actually through 8FOS to audit calls, audit team, audit managers to actually say, hey, here's a few tips you could have done on that call differently. So that's actually an interesting thing for you guys to consider too at this time.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, dude, guys, like Patrick, like this is insane, right? To double and to have this level of growth, like congratulations.
Thank you.
If someone was considering about investing in ops because they're feeling the pain point, like what would you say to them, and what would you say even back to yourself, like maybe going up until that point of making that leap? Because there's always a fear of like, I'm going to make an investment. Like, I know I need to do it, but like, what would you tell to them or to back to yourself?
Yeah, I hear of it a lot where like a lot of companies just stay stagnant at one spot. And like, I think how you improve your systems, how you improve your team, how you grow a team is how you get to that next level. So investing into the operations side, like one, definitely impacted client success. We're retaining more clients. Clients are happier. Our churn is lowest than ever. Two, it allows ourselves to open up capacity so we can sign on. We can be aggressive on paid ads. We can just scale very aggressively like we've done in the last few months. And three, it frees back your time to focus on really the high leverage things and make your agency more enjoyable to work on versus just everything all on your shoulders. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely been huge from a financial perspective, but also just a peace of mind and lifestyle perspective to really just like work in your zone of genius, know what you have to do, have team members responsible for things that they are, and then have that strong system set up so that you can get great results for your clients and keep scaling.
Unbelievable. Well, Patrick, if someone wants to get in contact with you or learn about your agency, where can they find you?
Yeah, Instagram, Patrick N. O'Driscoll, Patrick O'Driscoll on YouTube and LinkedIn. That's where you'll find me.
Unbelievable. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. And guys, Patrick went from 1 to 2 million in 6 months, one of the fastest agencies. Gosh, in our sample size of over 1,000, you're one of the fastest to double from 1 to 2 million. That's a hard thing to do in just 6 months. So congratulations. And guys, this is a founder to watch. So thank you for watching, and go to 8figureagency.co to learn more about us to see how we might be able to help you. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.